My name is Clara Bennett, and I'm 34 years old. For 3 full years, I lived by one quiet, unspoken family rule: I would be the one to give. I would be the one to sacrifice. I would be the one working overtime, adjusting my budget, cutting back on my own small luxuries, and depositing steady monthly sums into a private college tuition fund, all for my 16-year-old cousin Lila, my Aunt Marnie and Uncle Greg's only daughter. No one asked me to do it. No family member contributed a single dollar alongside me. I did it willingly, out of loyalty, out of a desperate desire to hold my fractured extended family together after my father passed away and my husband left this world unexpectedly. I told myself family was worth the quiet financial strain, that blood was thicker than bank balances, that kindness would always be returned in grace and respect. I was wrong. Last summer, at our massive annual family reunion surrounded by nearly every relative I have, grandparents, cousins, aunts, uncles, distant family friends, and dozens of kids running across the backyard lawn, I watched my own aunt, the woman I'd supported financially for years, publicly mock and degrade my 7-year-old little boy Leo. She laughed at his gentle personality, teased him relentlessly for loving his childhood toys, and then, in front of the entire family, deliberately kicked and knocked over his most prized possession, a hand-carved wooden toy box my late father had built specifically for Leo before he died. Every single dinosaur figurine, every tiny wooden car, every handmade trinket my son cherished spilled across the dirty grass. Several pieces cracked, shattered, and broke completely beyond quick repair. And the worst part of that humiliating, heartbreaking moment, my Uncle Greg stood 10 feet away, watched every cruel second unfold, did absolutely nothing to stop his wife, and simply crossed his arms, leaned back against the patio fence, and smirked. He found my son's devastation amusing. He found my quiet shock entertaining. In front of our entire family, they made my gentle, kind little boy the joke of the day, all while their privileged, praised daughter Lila sat nearby, showered with compliments, adoration, and endless family favoritism. Everyone at that reunion expected me to do what I'd always done: stay calm, stay quiet, sweep the cruelty under the rug, apologize for my son being too sensitive, and keep the family peace at all costs. That was my permanent role in our family dynamic: the quiet giver, the emotional and financial backbone, the one who never rocks the boat, never complains, never demands respect, and always keeps everyone else comfortable. But that day, something inside me finally broke free from years of forced compliance. That night, long after my son fell asleep and the entire family had forgotten the incident entirely, I opened my banking portal and the detailed family finance spreadsheet I'd maintained for 3 years. I stared at the $32,000 tuition fund I'd built entirely from my solo income for my cousin's future. Without hesitation, without regret, without a single impulsive emotion, with cold, clear, calculated certainty, I canceled every penny of it. I closed the fund entirely, revoked all future contributions, and transferred every dollar back to my personal account. The next morning, I made one short, calm, unemotional phone call to my Aunt Marnie. That single conversation shattered her entire perfect, entitled world so completely that she dropped her morning coffee mug straight onto her kitchen tile, watching it shatter into 100 pieces, just like the future she'd taken for granted, and just like the broken toys she destroyed to humiliate my little boy. This is the full, unfiltered story of the quiet revenge no one saw coming, the end of my lifelong role as the family's endless ATM, and the hard, vital lesson I learned: love should never cost you your dignity, your peace, or your child's happiness. Welcome back to Real Revenge Diary, the channel dedicated to sharing raw, real-life family stories of quiet strength, long overdue boundaries, and the pivotal moment good, kind, generous people finally stop sacrificing their own lives to accommodate other people's bad behavior, entitlement, and cruelty. If you've ever been the stable one in your family, the reliable relative who always helps financially, always overlooks disrespect, always forgives unfair treatment, and always prioritizes family harmony over your own heartbreak, this story is for you. If you've ever watched your family shower endless favoritism on one child while dismissing, mocking, or hurting yours, you will feel every single emotion in this story deeply. Before we dive into every detail of the reunion incident, every year of hidden financial sacrifice, every family manipulation, and every shocking aftermath that followed, do me a quick favor: pause for 1 second, drop a comment below and tell me how long you've been the family giver who never gets appreciated. Subscribe to the channel and turn on all notifications, because the ending of this story is not a petty fight or a dramatic screaming match. It's a permanent, life-changing boundary reset that completely rearranged my entire family's dynamic forever, and you won't want to miss a single detail. To understand why canceling that tuition fund was not just justified, but necessary for my healing and my son's future, you need to understand every layer of my life, my family's toxic dynamic, and the 3 long years of silent sacrifice that led up to that fateful summer reunion day. Nothing happened out of nowhere. Every choice I made that night was built on hundreds of small, unacknowledged hurts, endless financial sacrifices, and a lifetime of being the family's overlooked, unappreciated provider. For to 8:30 my life, my losses, and my gentle son, full backstory, let me start from the very beginning, so you fully understand who I am and why my son's happiness means everything to me. I live in a quiet, tree-lined suburb just outside Indianapolis, Indiana. I work entirely from home running a small but successful freelance business consulting firm. I specialize in small business budgeting, client project management, and financial organization for entrepreneurs. I'm meticulous, detail-oriented, calm under pressure, and incredibly disciplined with my income. I don't live extravagantly. I drive a reliable older car, I shop modestly, I rarely splurge on myself, and every extra dollar I earn either goes to my son's needs, our household stability, or for years, went straight to supporting my extended family. My life has been shaped by unexpected grief and loss, which made me crave family connection more than anything. 3 years ago, my father passed away suddenly from a heart attack. He was my rock, my biggest supporter, the kindest, most generous man I ever knew. He was a carpenter by trade, and he loved building handmade wooden toys and furniture for his grandkids. The wooden toy box my son Leo had at the reunion, my dad built it from scratch, sanded every edge smooth, carved Leo's name perfectly into the front lid, and finished it with his favorite clear coat. He gifted it to Leo for his 4th birthday, just months before he passed away. That box was never just a toy storage container. It was the last physical piece of my dad's love, creativity, and presence in my son's life. It was irreplaceable, priceless, and infinitely precious to both of us. 2 years after my father's death, my husband suffered a sudden cardiac emergency and passed away unexpectedly, leaving me a single mother to our then 5-year-old son Leo. Overnight, I became Leo's sole provider, sole emotional support, sole safe place in the entire world. There was no co-parent, no backup income, no safety net besides my own hard work and discipline. Every single dollar I earn now supports my son's home, his food, his schooling, his healthcare, and his future. Every late night I work, every client I accommodate, every sacrifice I make is for him and him alone. Leo is the sweetest, most gentle, empathetic little boy you could ever imagine. He's 7 years old, quiet-spoken, soft-hearted, and incredibly sensitive to other people's feelings. He hates conflict, hates loud arguments, hates upsetting anyone, and he'd rather hide and be quiet than cause even the smallest disruption. Unlike other kids his age who run wild, scream, throw tantrums, or demand attention, Leo spends his free time quietly building dinosaur worlds, organizing his toy collection perfectly, drawing pictures for family members, and helping me with small household chores. He's kind to strangers, kind to animals, and endlessly forgiving, even to people who are unkind to him. Because he's quiet and mild-mannered, my entire extended family has always overlooked him. Loud, outgoing, high-achieving kids get all the attention in our family, and gentle, soft-spoken children get brushed off as boring, overly sensitive, or unimpressive. For as long as Leo has been alive, our family has favored my cousin Lila endlessly. Lila is 16, loud, charismatic, extremely academic, and constantly praised by every adult relative. She's the family's star child, the one everyone brags about, the one everyone makes sacrifices for, the one who can do no wrong in their eyes. My Aunt Marnie and Uncle Greg have spent Lila's entire life building her up as the family's greatest success story. Every family dinner, every holiday, every gathering revolves around her grades, her college applications, her awards, her future potential. Every problem she has is a family crisis. Every small win is a massive celebration. Meanwhile, my son's kindness, his creativity, his gentle heart, and his quiet strengths are never acknowledged, never praised, never celebrated. For years, I bit my tongue and told myself it was okay. I told myself every family has a favorite, that it wasn't personal, that I was just being oversensitive. 3 years ago, shortly after my father's funeral, the entire family was fragile and disconnected. We'd lost the glue that held our big family gatherings together, and everyone was tense, sad, and distant. It was during this vulnerable time that my Aunt Marnie pulled me aside at a small family dinner, her voice soft, her eyes teary, playing the perfect victim that she sat me down on my grandparents' couch, sighed heavily, and explained how terrified she was for Lila's future. She told me college tuition costs were skyrocketing, that she and Greg worked regular blue-collar jobs with no extra savings, that they could never afford Lila's dream university on their own, and that Lila's perfect GPA and endless hard work would go to waste simply because they couldn't afford higher education. She cried a little, talked about how unfair life was, and said she hated that her brilliant daughter's future was limited by money. In my grief and my desperate desire to keep our family united, I caved completely. I felt guilty for having a stable solo income, for having savings, for being financially independent while my aunt's family struggled. I wanted to honor my dad's legacy of generosity. I wanted to be the good, kind, loyal niece everyone expected me to be. I wanted to give back to the family that had always been kind to me when I was younger. So I made a life-altering decision that day. I told Marnie I would set up a completely separate, dedicated high-yield savings account solely for Lila's college tuition. I named the account Lila's Future and linked it to my primary business checking account. I scheduled an automatic monthly transfer of $900 every single month, no exceptions, no skips, no breaks. I promised her that every penny would sit untouched, accumulating interest, waiting exclusively for Lila's university expenses, tuition, textbooks, housing fees, everything she would need for her freshman year. I never asked any other family member to contribute. I never told my grandparents, never asked my other aunts or uncles for help, never even hinted that I needed assistance. I took the entire financial burden on myself. I cut my own personal budget ruthlessly to cover the monthly payments. I stopped buying new clothes for myself, stopped taking small weekend trips, stopped investing in my own business upgrades, and skipped every personal luxury to ensure that automatic transfer never failed. That every single month, without fail, $900 left my account and went straight into Lila's tuition fund. I logged every deposit in my private family finance spreadsheet, complete with dates, amounts, and notes. I watched the balance grow slowly but steadily month after month, year after year. By the time the summer reunion rolled around 3 years later, that fund had grown to $32,147, all my hard-earned, self-sacrificed money, saved specifically for my cousin's future. And do you know what I got in return for 3 years of consistent, selfless financial support? Entitlement. Pure, ungrateful, unapologetic entitlement. My aunt and uncle stopped viewing my monthly contributions as a generous gift and started viewing them as an obligation. They began expecting my financial support as their birthright. They stopped thanking me, stopped acknowledging my sacrifices, and started treating me like a personal bank that existed solely to fund their daughter's perfect future. Worse than that, they began treating my gentle little son with increasing disdain and mockery. Because I was their provider, they assumed I would tolerate any level of disrespect, any cruelty, any humiliation, all in the name of keeping the family peace and keeping their tuition money flowing. They thought I would never, ever withdraw my support, no matter how badly they treated me or my child. They thought my kindness was weakness. They thought my generosity was permanent, unbreakable, and completely exploitable. All the small red flags were there for years. At every holiday dinner, every birthday gathering, every family visit, they'd mock Leo's quiet personality. They'd tease him for playing with baby toys. They'd roll their eyes when he wanted to show them his drawings or his dinosaur collections. They'd interrupt him when he spoke, dismiss his feelings, and prioritize Lila's every word and desire above his. I ignored every red flag. I swallowed every slight. I kept paying, kept giving, kept sacrificing, because I believed family was worth it. I was so wrong. The annual Bennett family reunion is the biggest family event of the entire year. Every summer, all of our extended family gathers at my grandparents' sprawling backyard property, a huge green lawn, massive old oak trees, patio seating, a grill, picnic tables, string lights, and enough food and drinks to feed 50 people. It's loud, chaotic, crowded, and every single family member shows up without fail. This year's reunion fell on a sweltering, humid Saturday in mid-July, with bright sunshine beating down on the grass all afternoon long. For weeks leading up to the reunion, Leo talked about nothing else. He was so excited to see his cousins, to run and play on the big lawn, to eat barbecue and watermelon, and most of all, to show his older cousin Lila his brand new birthday dinosaur collection. He'd saved up his allowance for months to buy a set of rare dinosaur figurines, and he kept saying he knew Lila would think they were cool. He adored his older cousin, even though she barely acknowledged him most of the time. That the night before the reunion, Leo carefully packed every single one of his favorite toys into his hand-carved wooden box. He lined up his dinosaurs, his tiny wooden cars, his handmade toy figures, and zipped up his little backpack full of extra trinkets. He begged me to bring the entire toy box to the reunion, and I hesitated at first. I knew how the family treated his toys, how they mocked his love for childhood things. But looking at his bright, hopeful 7-year-old face, I couldn't say no. I wanted him to have fun. I wanted him to feel seen and valued for once at a family gathering. We arrived at the reunion promptly at 2 p.m. The yard was already packed. Kids were running around screaming and playing games. Adults were standing in clusters chatting, laughing, drinking soda and lemonade, and flipping burgers on the grill. My grandparents were greeting everyone at the gate. My aunts and cousins were setting out bowls of potato salad, pasta salad, fruit platters, and desserts. The entire atmosphere was loud, festive, and overwhelmingly family-focused. As usual, my cousin Lila was the center of attention the second she walked through the gate. A group of her high school friends followed her in, and every adult immediately swarmed her, showering her with non-stop compliments. "Your grades are incredible. You're going to get into any college you want. We're so proud of you. You're the smartest kid in the whole family." My Aunt Marnie walked around with her chest puffed out, preening over her daughter's success, eating up every ounce of praise from the family. My Uncle Greg stood by the grill, drinking soda, laughing loudly, and soaking in the status of being the father of the family's star child. Meanwhile, Leo dragged his heavy wooden toy box across the hot grass, determined to find a nice quiet spot under the big oak tree to set up his toys. He carefully carried each dinosaur out one by one, arranging them in a perfect line on a soft blanket I laid down for him. He sat cross-legged on the grass, completely focused, quiet and happy, waiting for Lila to notice him and come play. For nearly 20 minutes, he sat alone in his little play area, ignored by every single family member while everyone continued fawning over Lila. I stood nearby, helping set out food and greeting relatives, checking on Leo every few minutes. My heart ached for him, but I hoped someone would eventually notice his sweet setup and give him a little attention. That's when Aunt Marnie finally wandered over to the oak tree, breaking away from her group of admirers. She stopped directly in front of Leo's toy setup, looked down at him and his toys, and immediately burst out laughing, a loud, mocking, unkind laugh that cut through the entire backyard chatter. All the nearby relatives turned their heads to see what was so funny. Marnie crossed her arms over her chest, tilted her head down at my tiny son, and said in a loud, condescending voice meant for everyone to hear, "Leo, honey, when are you finally going to grow up? You're 7 years old, still playing with these baby toys like a toddler. It's so embarrassing. No other kid your age plays with this childish junk. You need to stop being so immature." I froze mid-conversation with my cousin, my blood running cold. Leo's entire body tensed up. His smile dropped instantly. His hands froze mid-air above his favorite T-Rex figurine. His little shoulders hunched inward, and he stared down at his toys in pure shame, his eyes welling up with tears. He hated being embarrassed in front of people more than anything in the world. I started walking toward them immediately, ready to defend my son, ready to tell Marnie to leave him alone. But before I could take 3 steps forward, she lifted her foot and shoved it hard against the side of my father's hand-carved wooden toy box. The impact was sharp and deliberate. The entire box tipped sideways and crashed violently onto the grass that every single toy spilled out across the dirt lawn. Dinosaurs went flying, tiny wooden cars skittered across the rough grass, and multiple handmade pieces slammed into the ground hard enough to crack and shatter. The most devastating damage was to my dad's signature hand-carved wooden race car, his favorite piece he'd ever made for Leo. It snapped clean in 2 pieces, the wood splitting down the middle, completely irreparable. I whipped my head toward Uncle Greg, standing just a few feet away, watching the entire cruel, deliberate act unfold. He saw Marnie kick the box. He saw Leo's face crumple in terror and sadness. He saw the priceless family heirloom toy shatter on the ground. And he did absolutely nothing. He didn't speak up. He didn't stop his wife. He didn't comfort my son. He simply leaned back, crossed his arms tighter over his chest, and wore the most arrogant, smug, triumphant smirk I have ever seen on a human face. He enjoyed it. He enjoyed watching my gentle son's heart break. He enjoyed watching my late father's gift get destroyed. He enjoyed our humiliation that a thick, awkward, stunned silence fell over our entire corner of the backyard. All the chatter and laughter faded for a long, heavy moment. Every relative nearby watched Leo's reaction closely. My poor little boy did not scream, did not cry loudly, did not throw a tantrum. He simply knelt down on the hot, sharp grass, his whole body trembling, silent tears streaming down his cheeks, and began frantically gathering his broken toys. He tried to fit the split wooden car back together, his tiny shaking fingers fumbling with the broken pieces, like he could somehow fix the unfixable if he tried hard enough. It was the saddest, most heart-wrenching sight I had ever witnessed. My sweet, forgiving son was so used to being dismissed and humiliated by this family that he didn't even dare react. He just tried to clean up the mess they'd deliberately made of his most precious belongings. And what did the family do? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. A few cousins glanced away awkwardly. A couple of adults mumbled quiet phrases like, "Kids will be kids," or, "It's just toys, no big deal." No one told Marnie she was out of line. No one told Greg his smirk was disgusting and cruel. No one comforted my crying son. No one apologized for destroying his beloved gift from my dead father. Instead, Marnie doubled down on her cruelty. She shrugged casually, rolled her eyes at my devastated son, and announced loudly to everyone within earshot, "It's just a box of silly toys, Clara. Don't overreact. He's way too old for this childish stuff anyway. He shouldn't bring baby toys to an adult family reunion. He needs to learn how to behave maturely." In that single moment, every small hurt I'd endured for 3 years crashed over me like a tidal wave. Every monthly payment I'd sacrificed. Every budget cut I'd made. Every time I'd overlooked their disrespect. Every time I'd prioritized their daughter's future over my own son's dignity. I'd spent 3 years funding their perfect family life, funding their daughter's privileged future, sacrificing my own money and security for them, and this was how they repaid me, by publicly humiliating my child, destroying his most precious memories, and finding joy in his pain. I felt no fiery, explosive anger. I didn't scream, didn't argue, didn't cause a scene at the reunion. I'd spent my entire adult life keeping the peace, and in that moment, I was done performing kindness for people who didn't deserve it. I walked slowly over to my son, knelt down in the grass beside him, pulled him gently into my arms, and wiped his silent tears away with my thumb that I whispered softly to him so only he could hear, "It's okay, baby. We're going to fix this. We're leaving soon, and you never have to feel this sad again. None of this is your fault." I quietly gathered all his broken toys, carefully collected the shattered pieces of my dad's wooden car, packed everything back into the damaged toy box, and lifted it up in my arms. I took Leo's hand, walked calmly through the crowd of silent, complicit family members, loaded the toy box and my son into my car, and drove away from the reunion before the main dinner even started. I didn't say goodbye to anyone. I didn't look back. I was done playing the peaceful, forgiving family giver. On the drive home, Leo sat silently in the back seat, clutching the broken wooden car pieces tightly in his small hands. He didn't ask why they were mean to him. He didn't complain. He just sat quiet and sad, and I knew in my bones that I could never again fund a family that hurt my child for sport. When we got home, I helped Leo clean up his broken toys, bandage a few small scrapes from the rough grass, and sat with him while he watched a calm cartoon to settle his emotions. I fixed him his favorite snack, hugged him repeatedly, and reassured him that his toys, his kindness, and his feelings were all incredibly special and important, even if our family couldn't see it. By 8 p.m., Leo was tired from the long, stressful day, and he fell asleep peacefully in his bed. I tucked him in, kissed his forehead, and closed his bedroom door softly. The entire house fell completely quiet. No noise, no distractions, no family chaos, just me, my thoughts, and the weight of 3 years of unappreciated sacrifice. I walked down to my home office, flipped on my soft desk lamp, and sat down in front of my laptop. The room was dim, calm, and still. I pulled up my secure banking website and opened the dedicated Lila's Future savings account I'd created 3 years prior. The balance stared back at me clearly, $32,147. Every single penny mine. Every single penny sacrificed from my solo business income. Every single penny given selflessly, with zero expectation of repayment. For a brief, split second, I hesitated. I'm human. I knew Lila was innocent in all of this cruelty. She was a 16-year-old kid who'd grown up spoiled, privileged, and sheltered by her parents' entitlement. She hadn't knocked over the toy box. She hadn't mocked Leo. She hadn't smirked at his pain. She was just a kid benefiting from my aunt and uncle's ungrateful behavior. A small part of me worried I was punishing the wrong person. I worried I was ruining a teenager's hard-earned future for her parents' mistakes. I worried the family would call me cruel, bitter, petty, and vengeful. I worried I would lose every last family connection I had left. But then I turned my head and looked at the damaged wooden toy box sitting in the corner of my office. I looked at the broken pieces of my dad's handmade car sitting on my shelf. I thought of Leo's trembling body, his silent tears, his pure humiliation in front of the entire family. I thought of 3 years of endless giving, endless sacrifice, endless forgiveness, and zero gratitude, zero respect, zero kindness in return. And I realized the truth, I wasn't punishing Lila. I was stopping my own involuntary payment for my family's cruelty. I was no longer funding a household that hurt my child. I was no longer working overtime, sacrificing my own stability, to reward entitlement and bullying. Love is not a transaction, but endless one-sided giving to people who harm you is not love, it's self-abuse. With steady, unshaking hands, I began the quiet, permanent process of closing the fund. This was no impulsive, emotional decision. This was calculated, final, and completely justified. First, I disabled all automatic monthly transfers that had been running for 3 years. I turned off the $900 recurring payment that had never once missed a month. Second, I initiated a full balance transfer, moving every single dollar from Lila's dedicated tuition fund back into my personal primary checking account. Third, I submitted a formal request to close the dedicated savings account entirely, removing all linked access and deleting the account permanently. Fourth, I opened my family finance spreadsheet and typed a single, clear note next to 3 years of deposit history, fund terminated permanently. No further financial support for household that harms my child. Every step was calm, methodical, and irreversible. The loudest sound in my entire house that night was the quiet click of my computer mouse. There were no screams, no fights, no dramatic outbursts. My revenge was quiet, clean, legal, and 100% deserved. I stopped paying for other people's cruelty. I stopped being the family's endless ATM. I stopped sacrificing my child's dignity for fake family harmony. By 11:30 p.m., the process was fully complete. The $32,000 fund was entirely returned to my ownership. The account was closed forever. No more payments, no more sacrifices, no more unappreciated generosity. I closed my laptop, checked on my sleeping son one last time, and fell asleep more peacefully than I had in 3 entire years. For the first time since my father died, I didn't feel obligated to buy my family's love. I woke up the next morning calm, rested, and completely sure of my decision. I made Leo pancakes for breakfast, we watched cartoons together, and we talked about fixing his toys and having a small, happy do-over family day just for us. There was no guilt in my heart, no regret, no second-guessing. I knew I'd made the right choice for my son and for myself. At exactly 8:10 a.m., after Leo was settled with his morning playtime, I picked up my phone and dialed Aunt Marnie's home number. I had planned this call carefully. I would not yell, not argue, not explain myself in excess. I would state plain, factual truth with zero emotion, zero drama, zero apology. Marnie answered on the second ring. I could hear the clink of ceramic and the sound of coffee pouring in the background. She was clearly sitting at her kitchen table, enjoying her peaceful morning routine, completely oblivious to the life-changing news I was about to deliver. Her voice was bright, chipper, and casual. Hey Clara. Good morning. How are you guys doing after the reunion yesterday? She asked cheerfully, like she hadn't publicly humiliated my son and destroyed his most precious belongings less than 24 hours prior. I kept my voice flat, steady, and completely calm, no anger, no bitterness, just pure fact. I'm calling to inform you that I have permanently closed Lila's dedicated college tuition fund. All $32,147 has been transferred back to my personal account. All future automatic contributions have been canceled. There will be no further financial support from me for Lila's college expenses, now or ever again. There was a long, stunned beat of dead silence on the other end of the phone. For a full 3 seconds, Marnie said nothing. I could practically hear her brain processing the impossible news. Then she let out a disbelieving, nervous laugh, assuming I was throwing a temporary childish tantrum. Clara, come on, be serious. You're upset about that little toy incident yesterday? It was nothing. We were just teasing Leo a little, it's not a big deal. You can't cancel Lila's entire college future over some broken kid toys. I cut her off firmly but gently, no room for argument. This is not a tantrum, Marnie. This is a permanent boundary. For 3 years, I sacrificed hundreds of dollars every single month to fund your daughter's future with zero gratitude. In return, you publicly mocked my 7-year-old son, destroyed his irreplaceable heirloom toy, and Greg stood by and smirked while my child cried in humiliation. I will never again financially support a household that harms my child. The fund is gone forever. My decision is final. That's when it happened. Mid-breath, mid-argument, Marnie's grip slipped completely. I heard a sharp, deafening crash over the phone line. Her ceramic morning coffee mug slipped out of her hand, slammed hard against her kitchen tile floor, and shattered into dozens of sharp pieces. Hot coffee splashed everywhere across her floor, her table, her feet. She gasped loudly in pure shock and rage. Her chipper morning tone vanished instantly, replaced by shrill, furious screaming. Are you insane? You're ruining my daughter's entire life. Do you know how hard she's worked for college? You're cruel, selfish, unforgiving. You're punishing a child for adult drama. How dare you do this to our family? I listened to her scream for 10 more seconds, then spoke one final time. You chose to humiliate my son. You chose to destroy his belongings. You chose entitlement over gratitude. I choose my child's dignity over your daughter's free college funding. Goodbye, Marnie. I hung up the phone calmly, blocked her number temporarily, and went back to spending the day loving my son. I didn't engage with her rage. I didn't defend myself. I didn't beg for her understanding. I simply ended the one-sided transaction that had drained me for 3 years. 45:00-52:00 family backlash, gossip, and unfair accusations. Within hours of that phone call, the entire family gossip mill exploded into overdrive. By midday, every single relative had heard Marnie's twisted, one-sided version of the story. She told everyone I was a bitter, cruel, selfish woman who canceled a poor teenage girl's college future over a few broken plastic toys. She lied and said Leo had misbehaved first, that she'd only gently teased him, that I was overreacting monstrously. She completely omitted every detail: the hand-carved heirloom from my dead father, the deliberate public humiliation, Greg's cruel smirk, 3 years of my silent financial sacrifice. The family ate up her lies without a single question. No one reached out to me for my side of the story. No one asked how Leo felt. No one acknowledged my 3 years of endless giving. Everyone immediately sided with the favored family star and her entitled parents that my grandparents called me, begging me to fix this and stop being stubborn. Multiple cousins texted me passive-aggressive messages about how family comes first, and how I was destroying family unity over nothing. Distant aunts commented that I was too harsh and needed to forgive and forget. The entire family painted me as the villain, and Marnie and Greg as the poor, innocent victims of my cruelty. The hardest, most painful part of the entire backlash came 3 nights later, at Leo's bedtime. We were cuddled up reading his dinosaur book, when he closed the pages, looked up at me with his big, gentle eyes, and asked the question that broke my heart completely: "Mommy, did I be bad at the reunion? Is everyone mad at me?" My 7-year-old son, the victim of unprovoked cruelty, was blaming himself for adult entitlement and cruelty. He thought he'd done something wrong simply for loving his toys, simply for being quiet and gentle, simply for existing in a family that favored his cousin over him. I held him tight and told him the absolute truth, slow and clear: "You did absolutely nothing wrong, my love. Grown-ups made bad, unkind choices. None of this is your fault. You are perfect exactly the way you are, and I will always protect you, no matter what anyone in the family says." That night, I had zero regret about canceling the fund. Protecting my son's mental health and self-worth was worth every single family argument, every gossip, every unfair accusation. That a week after the incident, my Uncle Greg showed up alone on my front porch while Leo was playing in the backyard. He looked uncomfortable, guilty, and stripped of his usual smug arrogance. For the first time ever, he dropped the tough, entitled family act and spoke to me honestly. He admitted he'd watched every second of Marnie's cruelty. He admitted he'd smirked out of cowardice, not amusement, smirking to avoid conflict with his wife, who always got her way in their household. He confessed that Marnie had grown up as the family's spoiled favorite, just like Lila, and she'd never had to work for anything in her life. She'd always had other family members sacrifice for her, so she'd grown up believing the world owed her everything. Greg told me he'd been silently ashamed of his wife's behavior for years, but he was too weak to stand up to her. He apologized quietly for his silence and his smirk, but he didn't ask me to reinstate the fund. He didn't beg for forgiveness. He simply acknowledged that I was completely right to protect my son, and that the family had treated me horribly for far too long. 2 weeks after I canceled the tuition fund, I received a 10-minute-long voicemail from Aunt Marnie that completely shifted my perspective of her, though it never changed my boundaries. Her voice was shaky, broken, and genuinely tearful. No anger, no entitlement, no manipulation in those first few minutes. That she confessed that she'd grown up as the family's only favored child, just like Lila. Her entire identity was built on being the successful, special daughter everyone sacrificed for. She admitted she'd never learned gratitude, never learned hard work, never learned how to treat people who gave to her selflessly. She tearfully admitted she'd taken my 3 years of monthly sacrifices completely for granted, that she'd never stopped to consider how humiliating and painful that reunion day was for Leo, and that she'd been cruel and unforgivably rude to an innocent child. For a brief moment, she was honest, vulnerable, and human. But the second her vulnerability ended, the old entitlement snapped right back into place. Her voice hardened, and she finished the voicemail with the same selfish demand: "You have the money, Clara. You can afford this. You owe Lila this future. You have to fix this for her." I felt sympathy for her broken childhood and her lifelong entitlement complex, but sympathy does not equal obligation. I would not punish myself or my son to fix her lifelong character flaws. I would not reopen the tuition fund, would not resume payments, would not reward her cruelty with more sacrifice. But I refused to become as cruel as her. I refused to destroy her daughter's future out of spite. Instead of free, unearned money, I gave Lila something far more valuable: opportunity. I connected Marnie with one of my small business clients who was hiring a part-time student administrative assistant for high schoolers, a paid position with flexible weekend hours, real professional experience, and college resume benefits. It was a fair, earned opportunity: no handouts, no free rides, no exploitation on either side. 2 months later, everything settled into a calm, healthy new normal. Lila applied for and got the student job. She began working weekend shifts, earning her own college savings with her own hard work. She no longer relied on my unearned financial sacrifice. She learned responsibility, gratitude, and independence, lessons her parents never taught her. Aunt Marnie stopped gossiping about me in the family. She stopped demanding handouts. She still doesn't like me, still doesn't apologize formally, but she respects my boundaries now. Uncle Greg remains quiet and respectful whenever we cross paths at family gatherings. I took Leo's damaged wooden toy box to a local professional woodworker, who repaired most of the damage. The broken wooden car from my dad remains split in 2 pieces, and I keep it on our bookshelf as a permanent reminder: kindness without boundaries is not kindness. It's self-sacrifice that hurts the people you love most. Most importantly, my son healed. He no longer fears family gatherings. He no longer blames himself for other people's cruelty. He knows his worth: his kindness is a strength, not a weakness, and his mother will always defend and protect him. In October, I received a handwritten letter from 16-year-old Lila. Inside was a drawing of a little boy playing with dinosaurs under an oak tree, with a single handwritten sentence at the bottom: "I'm sorry about your son's toys. I'm working hard for my future now. Thank you for teaching my family how to be grateful." That letter confirmed everything I'd learned the hard way after 3 years of sacrifice and one painful reunion day: family love is never a bill. If your family only loves you as long as you're paying for them, that's not family, that's a transaction. And no child's dignity is ever worth funding someone else's privilege. If you've ever been the family giver, the one who sacrifices endlessly for ungrateful relatives, the one who overlooks cruelty to keep the peace, drop a comment below and share your story. Subscribe for more true calm drama stories about quiet strength, hard boundaries, and choosing your peace over toxic family harmony. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.